Every 24 hours, over 2 million British families sit down to eat chicken. What if I told you that right now, in your freezer, there could be traces of one of the most sophisticated drug smuggling operations Britain has ever seen? A single traffic stop exposed it all. One nervous driver. One routine inspection. One discovery that shattered our most basic assumption, that we know what's in our food. But inside those innocent-looking chicken breasts, you will find pure, white, cocaine. And this wasn't just a one-time smuggling attempt. For more than 18 months, this operation had been moving narcotics through Britain's food supply chain, potentially contaminating the very meals you've served your family. The question wasn't just how much cocaine had already made it through. The question was, how deep did this operation really go? And could it happen again? Tonight, True Crime Chronicles takes you inside the investigation that uncovered not just a drug trafficking network, but an unprecedented infiltration of essential infrastructure that authorities call the most sophisticated smuggling operation in British history. And what investigators discovered about who was behind it will make you question everyone around you. Before we dive deeper, if you're fascinated by the ingenious methods criminals use and how law enforcement catches them, hit that subscribe button now. Crime Scene Chronicles brings you the most shocking true crime cases, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. For over a year, while you were living your normal life, shopping for groceries and preparing dinner for your family, a shadow network was operating in plain sight across Britain. 10 individuals. Multiple cities. Millions in profits. One cold, calculated mission, to flood the United Kingdom with cocaine on an industrial scale. But who were these people? Not the stereotypical drug dealers you might imagine. These were businessmen. Logistics experts. Supply chain specialists who understood one critical thing about modern society: we rarely question what's inside the products we consume. Their method wasn't just clever, it was diabolical in its simplicity. While legitimate businesses were moving food supplies across the country, this gang gradually infiltrated the supply chain. They established relationships with food distribution companies. They learned delivery schedules. They studied inspection protocols. And then, they made their move. What police would later discover was a fleet of modified vans with custom-built secret compartments so sophisticated that they would pass through standard checkpoints without raising an eyebrow. Some disguised as mechanical service vehicles, complete with authentic-looking tools and equipment to maintain their cover. But the true genius, or perhaps the true evil, of their operation was hidden in the cargo itself. Imagine being the quality control inspector who discovers that the chicken breasts on your inspection table aren't quite right. The weight is off. The color slightly unusual. And when you cut deeper, you find a tightly wrapped package nestled within the flesh itself. Not a natural defect or contamination, but something deliberately placed there by human hands. The initial shock giving way to the horrifying realization that the entire shipment, tons of poultry destined for supermarket shelves and family dinner tables across Britain, might be compromised. Not just as a health concern, but as part of an elaborate criminal enterprise operating in plain sight through the most mundane of products. The gang had perfected a method of packaging cocaine inside raw chicken products. They would carefully slice open the meat, insert vacuum-sealed packages of pure cocaine, and reseal the product so perfectly that it appeared untampered. The frozen poultry provided the perfect cover, cold enough to mask heat signatures that might trigger thermal scanning, bulky enough to hide substantial quantities, and commonplace enough that even if discovered, it could potentially be written off as a single corrupted shipment. But there was something else authorities would later discover about this operation, something that made it far more dangerous than anyone initially realized. This wasn't just about cocaine. The investigation would eventually uncover connections to something much bigger. But first, police needed to identify who was pulling the strings. Every criminal operation has its masterminds, the architects who remain hidden in the shadows while their plans unfold. But who were the puppet masters behind Britain's frozen cocaine empire? Police would identify two primary figures, Maninder Dosanjh, 39, and Amandeep Rishi, 42. On the surface, respectable businessmen with clean records. The type of men you might see at your local cafe or pass on the street without a second glance. But behind closed doors, they were orchestrating one of the most sophisticated drug operations the UK had ever seen. But Dosanjh and Rishi weren't your typical drug kingpins, flaunting wealth and drawing attention. They were calculated, methodical, almost corporate in their approach. Former colleagues described Dosanjh as brilliant with logistics, a skill he would pervert to move not products, but poison through Britain's supply chains. Rishi, meanwhile, had connections, the kind that opened doors to food distribution networks across the country. What made this operation truly dangerous wasn't just its scale, it was how invisible they managed to remain. The gang operated like ghosts, leaving virtually no trace. How? Through technology that most people had never heard of. EncroChat, a secure messaging platform running on modified phones that cost thousands of pounds each. The service promised absolute privacy, and for a time, delivered it. The gang used these encrypted devices to plan shipments, coordinate pickups, and manage their growing empire without fear of detection. "We're completely secure," one message recovered later would read. "Nobody can touch this system." They were wrong. On these supposedly impenetrable channels, the gang communicated openly about moving up to a ton of cocaine, about laundering over £10 million in cash, about expanding their operation across international borders. And expand they did. When police raided a nondescript warehouse in Birmingham, they made a discovery that stunned even veteran officers. 500 pounds of cocaine, not for UK distribution, but carefully packaged for shipping to Australia. Let that sink in. This wasn't just a local operation. This wasn't just about British streets. This was a global network with tentacles stretching across continents. The chicken smugglers had gone international. But what the gang didn't realize as they expanded their empire was that their perfect operation had already been compromised. And the very technology they trusted to keep them safe was about to become their undoing. The clock was ticking. But who would strike first? The authorities closing in, or the criminals preparing their next move? If you're finding this investigation as fascinating as we do, take a moment now to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Also share it with someone who appreciates true crime analysis. Your engagement helps us bring more of these in-depth crime cases to light. Every criminal empire believes it's invincible, until the moment it falls. Spring, 2024. In a classified operation room somewhere in Europe, cyber specialists from France and the Netherlands had achieved the impossible. 4 months, they'd been silently watching, monitoring, infiltrating, working their way into what criminals worldwide believed was untouchable, the EncroChat network. Imagine the looks on their faces as messages between drug traffickers suddenly appeared on their screens. Plans, routes, contacts. The entire architecture of countless criminal operations, including our chicken smugglers, laid bare. But the authorities didn't move immediately. They watched. They learned. They mapped the networks, identified the players, followed the money. A digital surveillance operation unprecedented in European history. For the West Midlands Police Organised Crime Unit, the intelligence was pure gold. But they needed more than digital evidence. They needed to catch these ghosts in the physical world, with the drugs in their possession. Detective Sergeant Maya Reynolds, a 15-year veteran of drug enforcement, would later tell reporters, "We knew what they were doing. We knew when they would move." The challenge was catching them in a way that would leave no room for legal maneuvers. These weren't street dealers. They had resources, they had lawyers. We needed it to be airtight. June 17, 2024. A seemingly ordinary Monday evening near Essex Docks. A white refrigerated van pulls away from the port facilities. To anyone watching, it appears to be making a routine delivery. Frozen foods. Nothing suspicious. Except for the unmarked police vehicles strategically positioned along its route. The van travels for 27 miles before officers make their move. A precision stop, practiced and perfect. Multiple vehicles boxing in the target with surgical coordination. When officers approached, they found Dosanjh behind the wheel. His demeanor, cool as the frozen cargo he was transporting. But his calm exterior couldn't hide what was in the back. 330 pounds of cocaine, meticulously embedded within pallets of frozen chicken. Street value, over £13 million. But this was just the beginning. As the investigation expanded, officers uncovered the gang's secondary smuggling method. In a separate operation that played out like something from a crime thriller, surveillance teams tracked Mohammed Usman as he collected what appeared to be ordinary car tires in Birmingham. For 3 hours, they followed him across the country to a quiet residential street in North London. There, under the cover of early evening darkness, he passed the tires to Sait Hashman, a transfer that took less than 90 seconds. The officers moved in. Inside those tires? Cash. Bundles of it. Over £800,000 in criminal proceeds, vacuum-sealed and hidden within specially modified wheel rims. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. As police expanded their raids across multiple locations, the true scale emerged: 880 pounds of cocaine seized. £2.11 million in cash recovered. An estimated £10 million in drugs prevented from reaching Britain's streets. And in one quiet warehouse in Birmingham, behind a false wall that required specialized equipment to access, they found it, the Australia shipment. 500 pounds of cocaine ready for international transport, complete with documentation that revealed connections to organized crime syndicates operating across 3 continents. One officer at the scene, who requested anonymity, described it simply: "In 20 years of drug enforcement, I've never seen anything this sophisticated." This wasn't just criminals getting lucky. This was organized crime operating with corporate efficiency. The chicken smugglers had been caught. But the question remained: how many shipments had already made it through before they were stopped? The answer would send shockwaves through Britain's law enforcement community. Before we reveal how justice finally caught up with this operation, take a moment to subscribe to Crime Scene Chronicles if you haven't already. Our upcoming episode exposes how a global money laundering network was brought down by a single receipt, and you won't want to miss it. 10 faces stared silently from the dock at Birmingham Crown Court. 10 men who had once controlled a drug empire now faced the full force of British justice. August 15, 2024. The culmination of what prosecutors called Operation Frozen Assets, one of the most significant drug trafficking cases in recent British history. The evidence was overwhelming. Thousands of EncroChat messages. Surveillance footage. Forensic financial trails. DNA evidence linking the suspects to both the drugs and the cash. The defense attorneys knew they were fighting a losing battle. As Judge Eleanor Blackwood delivered her verdict, the courtroom fell silent. Her words were measured but cutting. What we have witnessed in this case is not merely drug trafficking. It is the calculated corruption of essential supply chains. It is the deliberate exploitation of legitimate businesses. It is the knowing distribution of substances that destroy lives, families, and communities, all for profit. The sentences, when they came, were severe, a combined total of 81 years in prison. Dosanjh and Rishi, 15 years each. Hashman, 12 years. Usman, 10 years. 6 others, between 4 and 9 years each. But perhaps most devastating for the defendants was the asset seizure order. Everything connected to their criminal empire, properties, vehicles, bank accounts, legitimate businesses, all confiscated. Their criminal wealth stripped away as completely as their freedom. For Detective Inspector Luke Basford, who had led the investigation from the beginning, the moment was bittersweet. In a rare post-sentencing interview, he revealed something that hadn't been made public until then. "We estimate that for every shipment we intercepted, 3 to 4 others had already made it through. This operation had been running for at least 18 months before we caught them. The damage already done is incalculable." When asked if all members of the network had been caught, his response was tellingly brief. No comment. What did he mean? Were there still players out there, waiting to restart the operation? Or was this simply the caution of a veteran officer? The case was closed. But the questions remained open. The frozen chicken cocaine case wasn't just another drug bust. It was a wake-up call. In the aftermath, Britain's food supply chain underwent a radical security overhaul. New scanning technologies were deployed at major ports. Random testing protocols were implemented across food distribution networks. The cost to the industry, millions. The cost of doing nothing, unthinkable. But beneath the headlines and operational changes lies a more disturbing reality, one that few are willing to confront. The brilliance of the chicken smuggler's method wasn't just in its execution. It was in its psychological foundation. They understood something fundamental about modern society, our blind trust in the systems that deliver our daily necessities. Think about it. When was the last time you questioned what's in your food beyond the ingredients list? When did you last wonder about the journey those products took to reach your kitchen? We exist in a web of supply chains so complex, so vast, that we've surrendered our scrutiny to faith. Faith that someone, somewhere, is checking, monitoring, securing. Usually, they are. This time, they weren't. And that's the true horror of this case. Not just what was found, but what it reveals about our vulnerability. Dr. Elena Vasquez, criminologist at Cambridge University, puts it bluntly: for every innovative smuggling technique we discover, there are likely 5 more we haven't detected yet. Criminal organizations are essentially running R&D departments dedicated to exploiting our systemic blind spots. The chicken smugglers may be behind bars, but their legacy lives on, in the form of enhanced security, yes, but also in a troubling question: what else is making its way into our homes that we don't know about? There is, however, a silver lining. The case has sparked unprecedented cooperation between food safety authorities and law enforcement. New technologies are being developed specifically to detect tampering in food products. And public awareness has created a new layer of vigilance throughout the supply chain. As one security expert noted, sometimes it takes a shock to the system to reveal its weaknesses. The chicken smugglers may have found a vulnerability, but in doing so, they've helped us close it. But perhaps the most profound impact isn't systemic at all, it's personal. So next time you're picking up chicken from your local supermarket, take a moment. Look at it. Really look at it. Not with paranoia, but with awareness. Because while you almost certainly won't find cocaine hidden inside, the simple act of questioning, of not taking things at face value, is exactly what criminals rely on us not doing. And sometimes, asking questions is the first step toward finding answers that change everything. But there's one question about this case that still haunts investigators to this day. A question that takes us back to that warehouse in Birmingham, where the Australia-bound shipment was discovered. Who were they working with on the other side? The case of Britain's chicken smugglers isn't just a story from the past, it's a window into the evolving battle between criminal innovation and law enforcement adaptation. A battle that continues right now, as we speak. If this investigation has fascinated you as much as it has us, there are 3 things you can do right now. First, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Crime Scene Chronicles is committed to bringing you the most in-depth, meticulously researched true crime investigations, with new episodes every Wednesday and Sunday. Second, leave a comment below with your thoughts. Was there an aspect of this case that shocked you the most? Do you work in food supply chains and have insights to share? Your perspective enriches our community. Third, share this video with someone who appreciates the complexity of modern crime and the ingenuity required to combat it. Knowledge is power, and sharing knowledge empowers us all. But before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought. The frozen chicken cocaine case isn't just about drugs, or smuggling, or even organized crime. It's about adaptation. About the endless chess match between those who break the law and those who enforce it. And what makes this case so compelling isn't just how it ended, but what it represents. For every method we discover, new ones are being developed. For every network we dismantle, others are forming. The chicken smuggler's empire has fallen. But somewhere out there, right now, another criminal operation is learning from their mistakes, adapting their methods, and looking for the next vulnerability in systems we take for granted. The only question is, who will make the next move? This is Crime Scene Chronicles, bringing you the stories behind the headlines. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and stay informed.